Hey guys, welcome back to our weekly Rep Path podcast. Today we're going to be talking about mastering the interview preparation process. So last week we talked about resume optimization. So today we're going to get a little bit more into the interview process. Before we begin, guys, as always, please make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. All these podcasts will be recorded and be available, on top of other content that we're creating. So please make sure you subscribe. It's unfiltered medical sales coaching, so you can get all that content. Also, during this podcast, from this moment on, guys, any questions you have, please just submit it into the chat, and James, with my producer, will screen all those questions, and then at points during the chat, we'll take a break and be able to field some of the Q&A from you guys. So just to begin, first thing, guys, most important thing that you have to understand during the process of interviewing, you have to treat this like it's a sales call. The entire interview process is basically a sales call. So most people forget that. Okay. They are constantly, all these hiring managers, all these companies are constantly evaluating you during the process and saying to themselves, this is exactly how this guy or girl is going to treat a sales call. So that from the moment you send your resume to the moment that you start reaching out to people, to going through the interview process, to closing your follow up, everything comes back to a sales call. So you're always being evaluated. Don't ever stop thinking that. Even when you're reaching out to other reps that aren't the hiring manager, excuse me, remember, these guys are reaching out to the hiring manager. They're in discussions with him. So you want to make sure that you're constantly focusing on selling yourself. Okay. You're the product. And that's the way you got to, just like you are in any other sales role that you have, you're the product. You have to sell yourself the entire way until you get the job. You're always being evaluated. So always keep that in mind when this whole process starts. Okay. Most important thing too, another important thing too, is you have to understand how competitive the landscape is, guys. So that always motivated me. So I get every job posting that I post, I get between 300 to 500 applications. It's insane. Okay. So you have to, what do you do to stand out from the crowd? 500 applicants, there's a lot of good applicants in there. Now, while there's a lot of people that just take a shot, throw their resume out, they don't even read the requirements, that happens a lot. But there's definitely, a good percentage, say maybe 40 to 50 applicants out of 500 that are qualified, that are very strong. So how do I stand out from them? And how do I outwork them? So you have to do everything you can. I wish I can give you one tip that'll make you stand out in the interview process and get you a job in 2 weeks. It just doesn't happen, guys. You have to do all the little things, and all the little things add up to getting the role and being able to stand out to get the role. All right. So first things first, let's talk about applications. Okay. Most people, I'd say maybe 10, 15 years ago, or when I started almost 25 years ago, you basically, anyone and everyone that you could send your resume to, you would send your resume to. Okay. So get your resume out to hundreds of job openings. They call it, spray and pray. Essentially just spray your resume out to everyone, and then you pray, hope that somebody responds. Now, years ago, that actually worked. There would be one or two people that got in touch with you after you sent out that resume. This day and age, that's dead, guys. Okay. You have to be much more specific. So you might not hear this from everyone, but trust me, this is the way you get a job. Apply to less jobs. They might think I'm crazy, but trust me, apply to less jobs, more focused, but much more aggressive with each application you apply to, and make that your full-time goal with each one to each job application, to make sure that you're really focused, learning everything you can about the manager, the company, the culture, the dynamic, and you're going to do a full court press, to really build relationships for each individual job. So if you're going to, you used to apply to 100 jobs, I'd say apply to 10. Each week, focus on 3 to 5 jobs that you want to apply to, you know, and when you do that, there's a process that you go about. Okay. So you do this every time. It's non-negotiable, guys. You can't say, well, this one I like a little bit, so I'm going to apply. The other one I'm not really into, so I'm just going to send my resume. No, don't waste your time, guys. If you're not going to be full-fledged, 100% in, do not send your resume. The first thing you want to make sure before you send your resume, I used to think if you meet at least 60% of the requirements, it's okay to send your resume. It's so competitive now, guys. I'd say 75%. So if you're meeting 75% of the requirements that are listed in the job description, then send your resume. All right. Because then you know that you have a pretty good opportunity. You're being realistic. Because right now, I'm sure a lot of you are out there going, I'm just so sick of getting ghosted. I hear this every day. Ghosting is so frustrating. Recruiters don't get back to you. HR teams don't get back to you. Sometimes you get the direct manager's email address. You send your resume. They don't get back to you. But trust me, if you do these 2 things when you send your resume, they will. I'm not going to say every time they're going to get back to you, but it's going to increase your chances, and it's going to at least increase the responses to minimize that ghosting a little bit. Number 1, apply. Like I said, make sure that you're qualified. So at least 75% of those requirements that you're actually meeting, you're meeting expectations. If they ask you for a 4-year college degree and you don't have one, do not apply to that job. Odds are you're not going to get a response and you're going to get upset. And when you do this over and over, when you apply to jobs that you aren't qualified for, you get frustrated because no one gets back to you and it demotivates you. I've been there, guys. So don't do that. It only frustrates you. All right. So make sure you're qualified at least 75% of the requirements. And number 2, when you send your resume in, list in bullet point form how you're qualified. If it asks for a 4-year college degree, don't give me War and Peace and write 3 paragraphs on how well you did your sophomore year in chemistry at, Montclair State. No one cares about that. Just say 4-year bachelor's degree, a bachelor's of science, bachelor's of science in biology from Montclair State University, graduated in 2010. Done. That's 1 bullet. If it asks for a year of B2B sales, completed, 2 years of B2B sales at Cintas. Done. So go real quick with those bullets, because trust me, the recruiters, what they want, their job is to make it easier for the hiring managers. So as a recruiter, you can't just send every resume that you get and just send it off to the hiring manager and be like, hey, you guys figure it out. They'll never work with me again. So what I have to do, sorry about that. What I have to do, I have to narrow it down. And I have to make it very specific, I have to give the cliff notes, of that resume. So I send over a resume and I give bullet points on why that candidate meets expectations. So I have to make it easier for the hiring manager. So your job as a candidate is to make it easier for the recruiter. A lot of you out there are saying, screw that. I don't work for a recruiter. The recruiter works for me. Technically, the recruiter doesn't work for you either. The recruiter works with the companies. All the companies are my clients. So whoever pays the recruiter, that's who you work with. So the clients are the ones that are paying the recruiter. That's who they have to make them happy. As a candidate, trust me, if you really want to get a job, you want to make it easier for the recruiter. The recruiters are so busy. Some are lazy, but a lot aren't. A lot are good, but they're just bombarded with resumes. So if you get all these resumes, the thing you want to piss off a recruiter the most, send a resume and just say, Joe, I'm interested. As a recruiter, it makes you want to lose your mind because number 1, they didn't even tell you the job that they're applying for. So sometimes if I'm working on 30, 40 openings at once, I don't even know what you're talking about. So you want to make sure that you give me the listing. Say, Joe, I'm applying for the cardiology role in Tampa, Florida. Narrow it down a little bit at the top and say, Here's why I meet the requirements. And you could cut and paste the requirements and then in a different color, in red or blue or whatever, bullet point under each one while you meet those requirements. That's going to make that recruiter's job so much easier. But more importantly, it's going to make you stand out because then they're going to go, wow, this was nice and easy. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut and paste, send this off to the hiring manager while I have a conversation with you. Or after I have the conversation with you, put all the notes together, but I'm going to bullet point and make it easier for that hiring manager. So it could just be a cut and paste that they do. It's going to make it easier. They're going to notice it, you know, and it's much more effective. If you give your resume and then also give me, your whole life story, I'm not reading it, and neither are other recruiters. So you want to make sure that the good rule of thumb, those bullet points, they should be nice and small, where when you open up your phone, if I have to scroll with my finger, that's a deal killer, guys. That's a red flag. That means it's too long, the message. So keep it nice and short with the 5, 6 bullets, whatever many it is. Shoot it over to the to the recruiter. They'll be able to cut and paste, and they'll send it to the hiring manager. I trust me. You do those two things between making sure you're qualified and sending those bullets, you're going to get responded to more and minimize the ghosting. And that's the biggest challenge at the beginning, especially when you have less experience. Because I know a lot of you guys out there that may not be in the medical sales industry yet. You just graduated from college. You're working on this for months and you're like, what the hell is going on? Why can't I do this? I think I'm good. I have a great personality. Every time we're out, my friends and family says, you be a great medical sales rep. And I'm sure you will be. But if you have to do these little things to get in front of people, because all candidates tell me the same thing, Joe, as long as I could just get in front of someone, then I'm able to get the job. I just can't get in front of someone. So here's your chance, guys. The more that you increase your chances of getting in front of people, you're going to increase your odds of getting a job. If you can't get in front of someone, they're just reading your resume. Nobody gives someone a job just by reading the resume. So resumes get you interviews, interviews get you jobs. So if you get to that interview part, that's a huge step. You'll increase your chances, almost by 50% just by getting an interview to eventually be able to land that role. Okay, so try this out, guys, and definitely message me afterwards to let me know how that's working. But I'm very confident that you're going to see an increase in opportunities and minimize the ghosting. So next, excuse me, when you send your resume, okay, think of it for any of you sales reps out there that do have experience, but you don't have to. I'm sure most of you guys out there know what a detail aid is. Okay. Anything that has your product information, when you go into an office, you don't even have to be a medical sales rep, but whenever you go into any office, any business, and you have marketing material, they say the owner can't see you, the doctor can't see you, whoever it is. And you go, okay, you know what? Give this to him or her. And you leave the marketing material. Guys, I don't want to even say 100% of the time that shit is getting thrown out. So we know that that's not getting back to the doctor. A doctor has never come back to me. I can count on one hand in over 20 years doing this, that a doctor has got back to me and says, Joe, I just got your marketing material. Can you come back and give me a presentation? It doesn't happen, guys. They throw it out. So think of that use that same approach when you're sending your resume. Why would you just send a resume and think that someone's going to get back to you? You have to do more. So when you're in that office, you might have to leave a detail aid and say, Susan, or whoever the receptionist is, can I speak to a nurse? Can I speak to an office manager? There's always someone you could speak to, or the receptionist herself or himself. Say to them, here's why I want to meet with the doctor. Here's what our product does. Give something that they might say, you know what? Dr. Jones did have a patient the other day I heard him complaining about that suffered from XYZ, or I think might be able to benefit from this. You don't know, or they could go back and be like, hey, Dr. Jones, this guy Joe is a really nice guy. I know a lot of reps are annoying, but I like him a lot. He's been coming in every week. Here's what he left. It could be interesting. You don't know, so you always are having a conversation. You're not just leaving material and walking out, because you might as well go outside and burn it, guys, and throw it in the garbage. So think of that same approach with your resume. Every time you send a resume, again, it's going to be a job you're qualified for. All right. So you're sending that resume and then you're simultaneously reaching out to other reps that work for that hiring manager. Now you might say, well, Joe, the human resource person just said that there's an opening in, the endoscopy division for Boston Scientific in New York City. Okay, guys, you got to do a little homework. You'll be able to figure out just by typing in Boston Sci, endoscopy, New York City. Go on LinkedIn. You're going to see a bunch of names pop up. So you could see there's only going to be a few directors and managers. You're going to see a bunch of reps. Reach out to everyone. Contact as many people as possible. Create a little, short little blurb that asks to get time with them so you can sell yourself. You could, if it's Susan Jones, hey Susan, I just applied to the New York City endoscopy role at Boston Scientific. I'm very excited for this opportunity. I would love to pick your brain for a couple minutes. What's a good day this week that I can reach out? How's Thursday or Friday look? Something like that. Give them an option. Got to use old school sales techniques. Don't say what works for you, because trust me, they're not going to get back to you. A lot of people are still going to ghost you. But the more specific you are about the role, the division, and you're reaching out to the people that are in that same division, in that same region or area, odds are that the more specific you are and you reach out to that smaller circle, you're going to get a better response. So my goal always was, I will always make sure I at least try to have 3 conversations with individuals at that company before I get in front of that hiring manager, before that first interview. It's night and day how much that increases your chances when you do that. I just had a rep that went for a pain position role that was nowhere near some of the competition. I had 3 great candidates. The other 2 were studs. I didn't even think this guy had a shot. He busted his ass so much, reached out to so many people, had so many conversations, and didn't just have conversations to just have them. He had conversations to learn about the hiring manager, to learn about the dynamic of the culture of the company, of the team, the challenges, the competition. So when he gets in that role, he's ready to go on day one. That's what you want to be finding out. This guy right now is going to get an offer, and he had no shot against the other 2. They were so impressed by how hard he was busting his ass that now they want to make an offer to him, because they feel if he did this during the interview process, then that's what he's going to do when he gets the job. He's going to put in that same effort. And that's where I was talking about at the beginning of the call, guys. Treat this whole process like it's a sales call, because that's what he did. And it showed that he's going to bust his ass and outwork everyone. He didn't say that he was. He didn't say I outwork everyone. He showed them. So show me, don't tell me. That's a huge lesson, guys. When you're going through the interview process, never ever say no one will outwork me or I'm a hard worker. You can say that after you've shown it during the process. Because if you said that during an interview with me, first question I'm going to ask is, well, what did you do to prepare for this interview? And if you did everything and busted your ass, created a presentation, reached out to all these people, had all these conversations, remembered the people that you spoke with. That's very important too, guys. You want to get their names down and have that prepared when you go into the interview. All the research you did. If you do work with a trainer and do work with a medical sales coach, no secrets here. Obviously, I'm here to sell services too, but it is important. If you do that, let them know, because you're doing something to own your own development and get better. And that's what sales is. That's what it takes to grow in this industry and advance in your career, is to constantly learn and constantly want to improve. So if you tell them all that in the interview, that's going to impress them. And trust me, that's going to help you stand out. So again, reach out to 3. You want to make sure you have at least 3 conversations. That doesn't mean reach out to 3 people. That might mean reach out to 50 people. I don't care how much it takes, because you're cutting and pasting the same little blurb and you're just personalizing the person's name at the top. So you want to get that on LinkedIn. Reach out to everyone on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's obviously an amazing source for this. That's my number one source. So really utilize it, get better at it. If you're unfamiliar with using LinkedIn to contact people and message them, because that is a huge resource that you're missing out on. If you're not doing this every interview, you're falling behind, guys, because trust me, your competition is. So the goals of that, though, are it's not just reaching out to reach out. Again, first and foremost, you want to learn about that hiring manager. You want to find out what their key drivers are. What do they like? What do they dislike? What did that rep do if they interviewed with the same manager to get the job? Sometimes they give you a lot of great tips. You know, I had someone that on one of the calls that one of the one of the managers said that they were so impressed that during the interview process they were talking about different high volume physicians that were in the area. He invited the hiring manager to a dinner that he was having with one of her top customers that she was trying to get. I thought that was amazing. Now, not all of us can do that. Not everyone has these big connections with physicians that are specific for that, therapeutic area. But that was something that really stood out. Another thing that really stands out, when you find out the needs, and that's again, getting back to the importance of these conversations, you find out the needs of that hiring manager, you also can find out the needs of that territory. What are the real challenges? What are the opportunities? Who are the key doctors, the key hospitals? Where are they getting business? Where are they struggling? Are they on certain GPOs and not on others? Are they not getting reimbursed well? You also want to know this for yourself, but if you get enough information and can go in there, because I hate 30, 60, 90s. I think they're stupid. If I'm insulting anyone on the call, I'm sorry, but I think they're a waste of time unless they're specific to a territory. So if you give me a 30, 60, 90 that you just whipped up on ChatGPT, especially if you hand it to me, before the interview or during the first interview, I mean, if you didn't know anything about the territory, how can you create a game plan? But if you can get all that information, create a game plan that specifically talks about who you're going to call on, the business you're going to generate, the competition that you're going to get from, the hospitals you're going to approach, the low hanging fruit that you're going to grow, and then the ones that you're going to not waste your time because you're not on their GPO. You're not going to make miracles happen, guys. It shows that you did your homework and create me a business plan now that I can actually utilize. That's enormous. So that's another reason for the call. And lastly, these guys talk. So if you're reaching out to everyone on the team, trust me, they're going back to this hiring manager and saying, Joe Licata got back to me. Hey, this Joe Licata guy called me. This Joe Licata guy called me. This Joe Licata guy called me. And now it's like, the guy's like, well, geez, man, I didn't even meet this Joe Licata guy yet. And now everyone is telling me that he reached out to all these people. I have to speak with him. This guy is putting in way much more effort than everyone else. So you're showing him too that you're outworking everyone else during the process. It's very, very impactful. Okay. I never had someone that said, Joe, that candidate was great, but he just reached out to too many people in my company and started to piss us off. They don't say that, guys. Now, obviously, you're not obnoxious in calling these people and texting them at 2 a.m. or doing crazy stuff, but being persistent is what a sales rep does. So don't be afraid to do that. If you don't hear from them and it's been a few days or up to a week, send them another message. I don't care if you got to send them 4 or 5 messages. If they don't want to speak to you, let them say, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm busy, I'm away, but get a response out of them. Because just like doctors, again, we keep talking about the same theme. It's a sales call. The interview process is a sales call. Doctors, we're going to ignore you time and time again. The first time, very rarely are doctors going to open the door the first time and say, hey, Joe, tell me what you got. I got a half hour for you. Would love to switch today. Never. So it takes between 9 to 12 times to close a deal. You're going to be going to these doctors over and over and over. The main reason is they don't trust you. When you're new, you have to earn trust. And little tidbits each time, each meeting. Sometimes they can ask you something, you don't know the answer. You get back to them right away. That's great. When you don't know the answer, just as go off on a side point for a second, when you get into sales and you don't know an answer, that's an awesome opportunity, guys. That's a reason to come back and see that doctor again. So it's not only proving that you're not going to lie and say, yeah, that your drug can do this, it cures cancer. And then meanwhile, obviously no one actually does that, but you don't want to guess or make something up. I mean, that's a huge no-no, because God forbid you're wrong. You're never going to be allowed in that office again. And your reputation, doctors will talk. So if you get that reputation, that's an absolute killer. But if you don't know the answer, you're obviously going to come back, get that answer. That's another reason to meet with him. And it's a real reason. He wanted you to find something out. You can go back and see him again. So you just got 2 visits for the price of 1. So don't be upset if you don't know something. Use that as an opportunity to continue the sales process. All right. So again, guys, make sure every time, at least 3 conversations. Don't care how many people you had to reach out to. That's another non-negotiable. All right. And you will see the effects of this and the benefits. Okay. So another thing that I love to do that very few coaches teach, reps do out there, it's something that, I have all my clients do, and it works tremendously. We all send thank yous after the interview. Try sending a thank you before the interview. So if you're meeting, with Bob Smith, the recruiter tells you, or the HR person, hey, Joe, you're going to meet Bob Smith next week, for the interview, make sure you get his email. They might not give it to you, but if you've been doing your homework and you've been reaching out to other reps, majority of the time, guys, it's going to be Robert or bob.smith@medtronic.com. It's going to be a company email that you'll be able to piece it together. Okay. But hopefully you get that email. If you have that email, you are sending him a thank you beforehand. Okay. Just quickly explaining, hey, Bob, I know we're meeting tomorrow at 4:30. I'm very excited, enthusiastic for the opportunity. Can't wait, to meet with you tomorrow. Is there anything else, you'd like me to prepare ahead of time? Something like that. I'm just making that up on the spot, but something that shows your excitement for the role. Believe me, guys, if someone else is doing it, God bless them, but the majority of reps do not do this. So if you combine the work that you put in by contacting all these reps, and now you're already showing your hard work. You're already showing your excitement that you're calling all these people that you want to work there. Now you're sending a thank you before the interview. You're leaping, you're leaps and bounds away from everyone else, because they are not doing this every time. You might get a couple people reaching out to people. You might get, I still don't know many that send a thank you beforehand, but there's no one that's doing both. Do this every time, guys, and it's going to help you stand out, tremendously. So while, I've been talking for a while now and I'm tired of hearing my own voice, I just got to take a drink of water. James, if we could just take a breather and see if we have any questions from the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. Should I do specific research on a company or a product line that
Specific research about a product or a company line? Absolutely. Just don't get in the weeds. Don't have too many. Don't look to know every single detail about a product. You're going to learn that during the process. They're going to teach you that in training. Obviously know the products, know what you're selling, and know your competition. And you should, again, during those phone calls with other reps, know why doctors are using the competition and what advantages and disadvantages that, the advantages that you have and some of the shortcomings. You got to be realistic too, guys. You don't want to go in there and drink the company Kool-Aid and say, we have the greatest product ever. There's nothing wrong with my product. You go out there in front of doctors and start saying that, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. And even with the hiring managers, understand your shortcomings, but know how to sell your product. So definitely do the research there. But I would be more concerned of learning more about the hiring manager and the company and their culture and the dynamic of the team. So do the research, but just don't spend too much time trying to master and memorize everything.
What are three powerful questions I should ask an interviewer to stand out?
So we'll talk about that a little more too towards the end, but some quick things, guys. You want to make sure that you really get the questions are centered around expectations, and also around what the best reps do. So I always try to find out who are your top reps and what do they do well? What makes them the top reps? Who's your best hire, and why? Ask them straight up, what did someone do during the interview process that really knocked your socks off? You know, all these things, any question that you ask, you are always thinking in your mind how your skills relate to that, so you can fit what they're looking for. So you're not just asking questions to ask questions. Make sure that you're actually thinking like, okay, I've done that in my past. I meet, what he's saying. And then you want to reiterate that obviously during the interview. So, and, I like also asking questions about, what does good look like in the first 3 months, 6 months, a year, because you do want to get the expectations because it could be a red flag, especially when you're doing longer term sales cycles like capital sales or hospital sales. Some companies, they have expectations where they want you to get a product on formulary or, get a product that's not on the GPO in the hospital. And they want you to get, sell 500 units in the first 3 months. It's never going to happen. So you want to be realistic, because you don't want to, just get a job to get into medical sales. And meanwhile, it's a dead end street. So you want to know those expectations, for yourself, but also you want to show them that, that you understand the process, and know if that's realistic or not. So those are just some quick ones. We'll go over some more later, but those are just some quick ones off the top of my head.
How do I talk about gaps in my resume or lack of sales experience?
Yeah. So gaps could be a killer if your story doesn't make sense. Because guys, I do this for a living. I speak to people all day long, and I know when someone's BSing me when they have a gap. You just see it. They talk too much. Even if it's true or not, you don't want to over explain any negative. But if you've been out of work, for a couple of years, and you didn't, and a lot of times the gap really isn't a real gap because you've been doing another job, but you just didn't put it on your resume because it wasn't a medical sales job. Put it down. It's okay. Things happen, especially after COVID. I can't tell you how many reps they had to change industries. They did things they do whatever to survive, because they couldn't get another medical sales job for a while. So don't be embarrassed by that. Put down whatever you did, even if it's another job outside of the industry, because you want to show that you're always working. You don't want to show that, it gives a lazy sign, even though a lot of you don't mean to be, so I'd say anything over a year is definitely going to be a red flag and they're going to ask questions. But sometimes it does take that long to get a job. Excuse me. So just be truthful, be able to, explain why you had a gap that long, but especially if you had another job, put that other job down, just to make sure that the gap isn't that big. But usually if it's 3 to 6 months, that happens. It takes that long to find a new job. A lot of managers, unless they're a real pain in the neck, they're not going to be too tough on you for that. It's not going to prevent you from getting a job. But anything over a year, you got to make sure you have a good story and you want to make sure you fill that gap. Excuse me. And what was the other part? The second part of the question was gaps and
lack of sales experience.
Okay. So lack of sales experience, again, it happens all the time. So don't think that if you don't have sales experience, excuse me. Sorry. If you don't have sales experience, you can't break in. It's not true. Okay. Actually, 12% of all medical sales reps don't have sales experience and they're still able to break in. So what does that tell me? A lot of people have clinical backgrounds. a lot of nurses that break in, a lot of techs, but also there's people that, some don't even have college degrees and they're able to break in. So, but what they do is they outwork everyone during the interview process. So all the things we're talking about, these individuals do because they want it so bad. They're showing them, I can do the job. I'm going to show you and not tell you. I'm going to show you during the process. Excuse me. So outwork them during the interview process. Sorry, guys. Anything else?
Um, let's see. We have how should I answer why medical device sales?
How should I answer why medical device sales?
Yeah, like when I guess when you're
Again,
getting asked that in the interview process.
yeah. So that's a great question. And honestly, if you don't know how to answer it, that's a red flag for me. Is this the right industry for you? So now, you might not have the perfect answer. And, I work with a lot of people, candidates all the time, that they need to know their three whys. Why medical sales? Why are you the best fit for XYZ company? You know, and why you? I mean, like why? Excuse me. Why medical sales? Why XYZ company? And why you? Or why would you be a good rep in medical sales? Those three, you have to have the why medical sales and why you would be a good fit. You should know with like the back of your hand. You have to practice that. You have to talk about things in your life that you may not have done that are on your resume. Like we talk about this where you show passion about something that is related to medical sales. Either it could be a sales background, it could be working with patients, being compassionate, being a competitor. So a sports background where you're always competing because that's what you're going to do in medical sales. You're constantly competing against other reps. So tell a story. And I'm not talking about a long story. Just you could quickly say, ever since I had my lemonade stand when I was a kid, I always knew I loved sales. And then that could start your story on why you would be a good fit, because you always had that sales ability. So make sure that you practice that, but show the transferable skills that you've acquired over the years, and then incorporate that into a medical sales role as your why. So I can't give the answer for everyone because everyone's different. But if you don't have that answer before an interview, that's a red flag.
That's all the questions that we have for right now.
Okay, perfect. So getting back to the talk, and then later on we'll take a little more time to answer any other questions that come in. But some of the simple things, guys, when you show up to an interview, and I talked about this on one of my, my quick short post the other day, even though it's not exactly the interview, but both the interview and a ride along. One huge thing that you don't do, keep your phone in your pockets, guys. Turn it off. When you're at lunch, when you go run to use the bathroom for a minute, you could check, if it's an emergency, obviously you can make a call, but guys, turn your phones off. This is the most important thing that's going on in your life right now is that interview or that ride along. So if you want to blow a ride along and totally screw it up, have your phone out all day. And that's what reps do. We're all so used to it, checking our phone. It's rude to the individual that you're with. It also shows that you're not that serious about this role. So, but if you want to show it drastically increases your chances of getting the job, the more you have your phone in your pocket. Turn it off, leave it in the car that day. Excuse me, tell your family you're not answering the phone today. Don't be worried. Whatever you have to do, but trade the phone for a notepad, a pen and paper. Bring that pad in. So on a ride along, have that pad loaded with questions that you want to ask. Take notes throughout the day. You don't want to be, like on the spot, Channel 7 news reporter and be annoying, but you want to show them that you're fully engaged. So constantly, be taking notes. When it's appropriate, ask questions. If you're going into a case, you don't say a word unless they speak to you, unless the rep tells you that you can do something. There you want to be invisible. So don't you the worst thing you could do is talk too much or piss off a doctor during a case. You're never going to get that job. So you just want to be, completely invisible. Take notes where you can and ask a lot of questions after. But if you trade your phone for the notepad, you're going to do so much better both on interviews and definitely on ride-alongs. So when you're preparing for the interview, obviously you show up suit and tie on. you know, Unless they specifically say, do not wear a suit, we're going to XYZ place, it's very casual, come in with a button down. I still shirt and tie, a suit and tie every time. You can never overdress. All right. Number two, obviously multiple copies of your resume. I always bring my laptop just in case there's something that I need on my computer. But brag books. Now, brag books are something that some of you might not even know what the heck that is. Now, so for some of you younger guys, a brag book is a printouts of all your accomplishments. So essentially, any awards, any rankings, any quotas you hit, sales growth, any Excel sheets that you can print out to show, the proof of your sales success. You want to print that out and put that into a book, a folder, which is called your brag book. Now, reps used to do this all the time back in the day because sales managers required it. Anything that was in your resume, they wanted to see the proof of it. Now, let's be real. Most people can make up anything on the computer, so they could create all fake documents. So a lot of people don't ask. I was the type of manager that I didn't care. During the interview, I wanted you to explain to me how you did that, how you were so successful. And if you can tell me a good story, a good approach, a good process that, I could even take some ideas from and learn, but you show me that you're believable. I don't need to see all the proof. But if you can't answer all that, that's a red flag. But you want to make sure that you have a brag book because less people are doing it. And for me, if less people are doing it, it's another opportunity for me to stand out. So come in with that brag book. It could be on a zip file, whatever it is, where you can save that or share it with the hiring manager at the end of the call. You can have a printout of a booklet and say, hey, here's my brag book. If you'd like to take a look at it later, feel free. Odds are they might not, but who cares? You still left something that's more proof that you're a great sales rep. So if you can do that from day one, for all you individuals that are just breaking in, start creating a brag book, start collecting and keeping track of all your sales successes. So those are some just quick tips to prepare for before the interview. Obviously, you're showing up a half hour early, letting that hiring manager know that you're there ahead of time, all the simple things that are common sense, and some of the don't do's, the mistakes, like we said, your phone, deal killer, keep it in your pocket the whole time. Not taking any notes, constantly just yes and yep, oh, okay, and you're not writing anything down. I always liked reps that they just ask before the interview, is it okay if I take some notes? Have your notepad open. You don't have to sit there and write all the whole time, but anything, you should want to find information out during this interview because it's a two-way street. You're evaluating them like they're evaluating you. So you want to take that information that's going to help you make a decision if you want to make this your career. So take notes, ask questions. The question, you don't have to ask 50 questions just to ask questions. They have to be questions about, stick around, like we were talking earlier, about who the good reps are. What does good look like? What are the expectations and how can you meet them? What's the team dynamic? And what is the kind of individual they're looking to fill this role? And how well do you fit in that, what they're looking for? What kind of communication style does that hiring manager use? And what is he like from a rep? So what to deliver for him. So they're all questions that are forward if you took the role, that you could hit the ground running and be a perfect fit for the team. Because the whole time they're thinking, is this guy a good fit for the team? And is he a good fit for the our customers, for our doctors? So they're constantly doing that evaluation. And lastly, I'm sorry, I just draw a blank on uh, but come in with a lot of energy, guys. If you're in there very lackadaisical, not putting a big smile on your face, or, just not bringing that energy and excitement, very stiff, relax, have fun with it. These guys have been in your shoes before. So don't be so intimidated by them. They're like, oh, they're the almighty hiring manager. Screw that. Just be relaxed, be confident that you know what to do. Don't be desperate. Don't come off desperate. So bring a lot of energy, bring excitement, smile. They love that. They're never going to say this person's too energetic for me, or this person smiled too much. They were too happy. Bring that, guys. It really does help. Because who doesn't want someone that has good energy and is a good mood all the time on their team? Good energy is real. So the more that you can bring that good energy, the more successful, teams will be. They thrive on that. Lastly, we'll talk about is the close. Okay. The close is very important. Everyone, I shouldn't have to say this. Obviously, you're closing on every call, on every interview. Okay. But what most people don't do, they don't ask a setup question. Now, for baseball fans out there, the way I look at a setup, I'm a Yankee fan. So Mariano Rivera was the greatest closer of all time. No doubt about that. But he still always had a setup man that will come in the seventh and eighth inning before he came and closed the ninth. So the setup man, think of it, that your setup question is similar to your setup man. So at the end of the call, they're going to say, hey, Joe, we spent the past hour, and I learned a lot about you. Do you have any questions for me? So I'm very casual. I like to be very conversational. I don't want to be robotic and ask some like scripted question. Just say, hey, Bob, after speaking with me for the past hour and learning a lot more about me, for a fit for the role that you're looking for, what do you think? And leave it just like that. What do you think? See what they say, guys. You don't want to straight up say, am I a good fit for this job? You don't want to give a yes or no. You want to give an open-ended question. So now they have to repeat, number one, they're going to sell you to themselves by saying all the good things that you bring to the table. You also want to see what they retain during the conversation, because sometimes they miss points, so you want to see that, so they'll start talking about, I think you're a good fit because of this, because of that. And then they might say, but honestly, you just don't have the experience, or you're missing this, you're missing that. Guys, objections are awesome opportunities. That a lot of times they really have an objection and they're telling the truth. Sometimes they're testing you. Either way, it doesn't matter. Handle that objection. Whatever it is, you cannot go on to the close until you handled that objection. So we're assuming now that you asked, what do you think? They told you everything. They gave you an objection. Now you handled it. Now you can go to the close. Okay. If it's a first interview, obviously there's more steps in the process, so you'll ask them, what does the rest of the process look like? What's the next step? Oh, Joe, I'm going to bring you back, the top 3 reps to meet with our regional director next Tuesday. And then, we'll make a decision for a final round after that. Okay, great. Is there any hesitation right now why you wouldn't move me to the next round? Or straight up, will you be moving me to the next round? That's where you go for your close, guys. And if they say yes, great. A lot of times, guys, they're going to give you that, well, you're the first one we met. We still have to make a decision. Sometimes, guys, you're not going to be able to get a definite answer. It's okay. But always make sure that you attempted that close. Okay. And the other thing that I like to do is to try to get those names. If you didn't get them during the interview, or even if you did, of who the top reps are, you want to ask that hiring manager before the next interview. I know you mentioned that Sue, Bob, and Phil are all your top reps. Would you mind if I reached out to them? Can I get their contact info? because I want to speak to them and learn from them so I can hit the ground running before our next call. You know, one thing I know for sure, if they give you those names, you are 100% moving to the next round. That's a great sign. You know, they might say, well, I have to speak to them first. That's okay. You know, but when you follow up in your follow up thank you email, you want to talk about that again. So then you give them an actionable item that you're going to follow up with. I know I mentioned those three names, you know, and you said you would speak to them. You know, did you have a chance to speak to them? And would you mind sending their contact over so I can reach out before our next call? You know, again, you're showing them follow up. You're showing more of that sales process. So all good stuff. Even if you don't get it, you made the attempt. Do those things every time, guys, and you're gonna move forward in these processes. So that's all I have for now. I want to take the last few minutes if we do have any other questions
We do.
before we wrap up.
So Austin Chamberlain, he actually asked any advice in closing the hiring manager, which you kind of just went over.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it, Austin. Not to keep going over the same thing, but that's really it. It's the key is make sure you ask that setup question. You know, get a pulse of where you really stand. Don't dive right into the close because you need to know that first. Because same with doctors. If doctors can yes you to death, you know, and that's the worst thing, especially about pharmaceutical sales. You know, they can't prescribe a drug to a patient right then and there. It rarely happens. So they could say, "Yeah, I'm going to try it out on 5 patients, you know, in the next couple of weeks." Yeah, I think everything's great. And then you don't even see the numbers sometimes for a couple months that they lag behind. So it's hard to close them. So you don't really know. You're not going to always get an answer. So, but my whole point being, it's okay. You just want to make the attempt. So you need to have a pulse of where you stand first, because same with that doctor, you have to get objections answered first. He could just yes you to death. And then you can, if you ask more questions, you find out, oh, wow, this doctor can't even use me because the product's not even on formulary at this hospital. If it's not on formulary, they can't use you at a hospital. So if you don't ask that question, the doctor could just say yes all day long. But if you simply just ask, it's the same as in the interview. You know, if they have any objections, let them give you the objections, you know, but handle them first before you go to the close.
Okay, we have Keith Layden. Um, how do you overcome the lack of account relationships in a city that you're willing/want to relocate to?
Well, Keith, that's just hard work, man. You know, it's there's no easy fix. It's the same approach that you built relationships any other way. It's persistence, it's hard work, it's earning trust, it's getting out there and just busting your butt. You know, and it's you can I've done it a million times. I'm sure all of you out there, we're not at one job calling on the same specialist our whole career. At least few of us are. So every time you're starting over and it's not fun at the beginning, you know, but you bust your butt, you show value, you earn trust, you'll be able to build those relationships quickly. But there's no quick, easy fix. You know, always network and just outwork everyone else, and you'll get those relationships.
We have Silmir Bronkema. I think I pronounced it right. Uh, any advice on why do you want to leave your job?
So, why do you want to leave your job? Um, I'm assuming you're saying if you're if you're going for another job and you have to explain why you left the last one. I think that's what you mean. But if I'm wrong, please submit another question that you know clears that up. But you you want to be upfront, you want to be honest, but you don't want to be negative. So don't if it's negative, if your last job was a dumpster fire, your manager sucked, the product sucked, everything was horrible, you don't want to say that, guys. So you could just talk about the future, you know, and the opportunity that lies ahead of you. So if you're interviewing for another job, it's not about leaving some, you know, nightmare behind. It's about I love my old job, everything was going great, but when I saw this opportunity, it was the perfect fit for X, Y, and Z. And I'm really excited because of this and that. And just have positivity going forward, not negativity about your previous past. Because again, that's a red flag. And these companies will see through that because they'll think you're talking about them in a few months too. So you don't ever want to do that.
Sarah Terrell, RDH, very informative. Thank you for the invite. And Keith
My
also said,
pleasure.
absolutely thanks for the approach. Or that's my approach. Um, and then we have a couple more questions. How should I follow up after an interview process to keep myself top of mind?
Yeah. So number one, when you're sending your thank you, well before you even leave the interview, you want to get what are the next steps. So I mean, they could say, and I've had this before, Joe, nothing is going to get done before 4th of July. The next couple weeks are crazy. You know, take that to heart, guys. You don't want to follow up 3 days later and say, hey, where do we stand? I just want to follow up. No, you want to get that out during the interview. You could outright ask, when decisions are going to be made. Oh, Joe, we should know by next week. Is it okay if I follow up by Tuesday? So you want to get that straightened out before you leave the room, but just guys, common sense, you know, you don't want to contact someone every day, but whatever you spoke about, the first and most important thing is in your thank you email, reiterating some of the things you talked about, and start from there. But really, when before you leave, you want to get the information on the next steps and then respond appropriately in whatever timeline they told you. So because that can change every time. But it's okay to be aggressive and be persistent. But one of those things you just can't teach, don't be a pain in the ass. Because if you annoy them, they're not gonna get back to you. They're gonna move with another candidate. Don't come off desperate. Even if you're broke and you really need this job, we've all been there, guys. You don't want them to know that. It's always okay to let them know that you're not just interviewing here. You are looking at other roles because you're a great fit. You have to have that confidence, so you don't want to come off, if you have that desperate smell to you, it's a turnoff. So just be confident, but have common sense. Don't torture them with the follow-ups. Excuse me. Jeez.
Is it okay to send case studies, win stories, or testimonials from past clients?
100%. 100%. I mean, a lot of, again, that goes in your brag book. I used to have the one of the biggest deals that I ever did. I had, I showed the paperwork as proof because it was a multi-million-dollar deal. It took, 9 months to close. It was a very difficult process. It also helps me explain, you know, a lot of questions they ask sometimes are, explain a difficult process, explain, the biggest deal, anything that you can show that can help your case, definitely have it in your brag book. You don't want to get in there and just spit stuff out and throw it at the hiring manager. That's a turnoff because you didn't find out his needs first. But always have an arsenal. It's almost like a carpenter when they go into to fix anything. They don't come in assuming I'm just going to need a hammer and a saw. They come in with all their tools, and then they bring out the appropriate tool when they need it. So it's the same thing with whatever they're asking for. You want to make sure, oh yeah, I have a case study. Oh yeah, I have proof of a PO over $1 million. Well, yeah, I could show rankings. You know, always have that in your back pocket, but don't go, here are my rankings. The guy's gonna be like, I didn't ask for that. So definitely have all that in your arsenal and be ready to pull out when it's needed.
Right. And last question. What mindset set should I adopt before walking into the interview room?
Just be confident, you know, feel that you belong there, that you deserve the job, that you are a good fit. But confident, but don't be cocky. Again, you don't want to be desperate. You want to be like, I need this because it also shows them you don't really care about the job. You just need a job. No, you don't want that's a terrible place to be because that'll turn them off. Just confidence. You got this. You're a great candidate and you belong to be there, and just be relaxed. You know, if you could get the interview to be conversational, where you feel like you're just shooting the shit with someone, that's a great sign. That's a great place to be. If it's very robotic and stiff and you're nervous, nobody wants someone like that. So just confident, relaxed, and let the conversation flow, and you'll do great.
That's all I got for you today, Joe.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again. This was a lot of information. I know anything, guys, please, because I know you all have your individual issues and problems. Reach out to me. You know, this is what I do at RepPath. We do one-on-one coaching where we work with everything from your resume to your interview prep, career advice, anything that you guys need, either if you're breaking in or trying to advance in your career, you know, unfiltered medical sales coaching, definitely subscribe on YouTube or contact me via my website, reppath.com. And you also can message me on LinkedIn and we can set up a call to go over whatever needs you have. All right, guys. But thank you again. I appreciate all the support. We'll be doing these every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I look forward to everyone joining on the next call. Thank you, guys. Have a
Real
great
quick,
week.
Joe, do we
Yeah.
have a promo code for lobby still?
Yes, we do. Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you for reminding me. So, any lobby members on this call, if you do decide to move forward, with any coaching, please share the code Licata, Licata, and you'll be able to get additional discounts for any coaching services that I provide. So, all lobby members out there, please feel free to reach out. The code is Licata. Share that before when we speak, and I'll be able to get you additional discounts. So, thank you again, James, for reminding me of that, man.
No problem. Make sure you like and subscribe and tune in next week, same time. Have a great
Appreciate.
day.
Thank you, guys. Take care.